Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. You're in the How to Plant Safely in Drought-Tolerant Landscapes seminar. So I work for the University of California Agricultural and Natural Resources. We are the overarching department that houses Cooperative Extension, and our mission is to provide research and education to Californians. We try and extend the science from universities and other areas, campuses, out into the community. So we are the educators and scientists that are in your community. Our website is cesandiego.ucanr.edu, which is on the website. And if you have your cell phone out, you can take a picture of this QR code and that'll bring you to our website. For those of you who might not be familiar with our programs, I do natural resources projects across Southern California. But we also have 4-H programs, which is an after-school youth development program. And we also have the Master Gardener program. Many of you have found out about this seminar through the Master Gardener program. So thank you for volunteering for that program. It's a great program. We teach the public how to be better gardeners and how to improve their landscapes and many issues associated with horticulture and gardening. We also have food and nutrition programs in our San Diego office in Cooperative Extension. So please take a look at our website and learn more about what we do. So within Cooperative Extension, we're part of the University of California. We are a non-campus branch of the university, but like the university, we are a non-advocacy organization. We are not trying to push any sort of political agenda. We try to provide science-based information that's relevant to the public and to try and solve some of our local needs. So on top of that, we are not poison and control specialists. Well, Carolyn and I are not poison control specialists. And we're also not regulators. We're not the plant police. We're not going to tell you what you can or cannot plant in your backyard. We're here to give you information. I'm going to just tell you about our disclaimer. UCCE and UCANR present this information with references to poisonous and toxic plants, but we are not advocating for the use of poisonous and toxic plants in your landscape. This presentation is for informational purposes only, not as a guide for diagnostics or home treatment. Under no circumstances is this presentation meant to replace the advice of a qualified poison specialist or physician. It is noted here that our information is not a complete database of all plants that are poisonous, and it is very important to remember that just because a plant is absent from a poisonous plant list, it does not necessarily mean that the plant is not in some way poisonous. If you feel you have come in contact with a poisonous plant, please call the California Poison Control Helpline at 1-800-222-1222 or call 911 or go to your nearest emergency room. So with that said, the intent of our project is to educate you and encourage you to go out and work on your garden and to continue to garden in your backyard and to use drought-tolerant plants in your landscape so we can save water and try and create a sustainable garden. But we also want you to be safe as well. So the goal of our project is to provide you with materials. We've created a bookmark, we've created a brochure, and we've created a website, which we'll discuss throughout the seminar, that will educate you about how to safely use drought-tolerant plants that might be toxic or harmful in your home landscape. So this project started because we've noticed that there's some toxic plants that are being grown in home landscapes and public areas of commercial landscapes. So some of these plants are starting to become very common in drought-tolerant landscapes. And as we've been coming out of the drought that we had for the past 5 years, drought-tolerant landscapes are becoming very common, and they're a great way to save water in Southern California. However, many of the plants that are recommended in these drought-tolerant landscapes are not the safest plants to have in very public areas of your garden. So example, fire sticks can severely injure you. And there have been reports of people who have been severely injured from some of these plants, especially fire sticks. So while these plants are becoming common, we've noticed that people are starting to get injured. So we wanted to kind of create this guide that helps people understand some of the potentially harmful plants in drought-tolerant landscapes and educate you about ways to safely use them in your landscape, if you choose to use them in your landscape at all. So like I said, we've created a brochure, which the image of here is on the left. We've created a bookmark, which is kind of more towards the center. Both of those are available for a free download, and you can print them at home at our website, ucanr.edu/sites/plant-safely. And again, there's a QR code that can help direct your cell phone straight to the website. If you're also part of a group or an organization and want a large quantity for distribution, please email either Carolyn or I after the presentation, and we can send you some. Under normal circumstances, you could go to our office, which is in Kearney Mesa, which is pictured here and is on Hazard Way. However, the office is closed right now, so don't go there. We don't have any of these brochures or bookmarks at the office. Maybe someday we will have them at the office, but that's not going to happen today. It's not going to happen tomorrow, and it's likely not going to happen next week either. When our office reopens, whenever that is, you'll be able to get some there. But for right now, don't go to the office. Email us, and if you need a large quantity. So this is the brochure. I think it's very pretty, but I hope you do too as well. It talks about different ways of, talks about some safety tips for working in your garden. It also talks about the different ways that some of these toxic plants can harm you. We have, we can distribute them to the public. So please contact us. It's a tri-fold brochure. It's great for putting in like a visitor center or something like that. So again, that's available for download or to print at our website, and email us afterwards if you'd like a large quantity. So when developing the brochure, we came up with several safety tips that you can use in your garden to try and minimize the risk of being injured by a toxic plant in your garden. And so I'm going to briefly go over some of these safety tips with you. And what we've noticed is that the two groups of people who are most likely to be injured, or they have above average chances of being injured by toxic plants, are children and pets, especially puppies and kittens, young pets. So, and it makes sense because young children and pets are curious about new items, they're curious about the world, and they like to go exploring. Children like to play hide and seek. They're going to crawl around under bushes. They're going to put objects in their mouth. And we don't want them putting any of those toxic plants in their mouth. So if you are afraid that your loved ones could be in danger because you feel that they're going to be wandering around in your garden and encountering toxic plants, then you can remove those dangerous plants. So you definitely want to supervise your children in the garden. Just last week, my puppy was in the garden, and I noticed she was trying to chew on something, and it turned out it was a mushroom. I was paying attention to her, and I was able to get it before she started to eat it. Luckily, she was fine, but it does happen. Children and young pets are just out there, and they're exploring the world. So on top of that, we should teach children not to put any part of a plant in their mouth without checking with an adult first. So for example, fire sticks has a sap that is toxic and dries almost clear. So if a child were to put a fire stick's branch in their mouth, although they might not chew it, just putting it in their mouth could cause skin irritation, and because the sap of fire sticks can cause mild to severe skin irritations. Ingestion can also cause mild to severe irritation as well. So on top of those tips, we'd really like you to increase your plant identification skills and know the names of the plants, including the scientific names of all the plants in your landscape. And I understand that is a very high bar because we might have a lot of plants in our landscape. Common names are sometimes just not good enough. They're not very specific. Some plants have more than one common name. So mock orange is a common name for two very widely differing plant species. And on top of that, fire sticks goes by many common names, such as sticks on fire, pencil cactus, milk bush, and pencil tree, among many others. So if you are thinking that if you go by one of those names, the doctor or whoever you're talking to might not know that that common name refers to Euphorbia tyricale. On top of that, common names sometimes are not very accurate. So for example, fire sticks is also called pencil cactus, but it's not a cactus. It's not even closely related to cacti. It just happens to look kind of like a cactus. It's in the Euphorbia group of plants, which is a spurge, and it has a milky latex sap, which cactus don't have a milky latex sap, and that sap of fire sticks, like I mentioned earlier, is quite toxic, whereas cactus sap is not as toxic. So if you're thinking that, oh, fire sticks is relatively safe because you know it as pencil cactus and cacti tend to be relatively safe, but fire sticks is not a cactus, it's a euphorbia, it's a spurge, and it has a toxic sap. This seems like it's common sense, but please do not eat landscape plants or to make teas, compresses, or poultices with them. If you happen to accidentally misidentify the plant that you have or mistake the plant in your landscape for one that is not toxic, you could endanger yourself. So for example, fennel and poison hemlock look very similar. If you're going to be eating one of these plants, you have to be 100% sure that the plant you're eating is fennel and not poison hemlock, because poison hemlock, like the common name suggests, is poisonous and it can be lethal. So when we're out doing our normal gardening activity, like in our vegetable patch or whatever, we don't tend to need a lot of personal protective equipment. But when we're in our drought-tolerant landscape, we need to wear quite a bit more PPE, personal protective equipment, because some of the drought-tolerant plants that we have toxic sap, has spines or thorns, and we want to make sure that we don't injure ourselves. And we need to be a little extra careful when gardening in our drought-tolerant landscapes. So depending on the situation, you may want to wear a long sleeve shirt, long pants, leather gloves, disposable gloves, and the disposable gloves are for when you're handling a plant with toxic sap, so you don't contaminate your leather gloves and then wear them the next day and then accidentally injure yourself on the toxic sap. So you wear disposable gloves and then dispose of them after you're done. Or you could even wear your disposable gloves over leather gloves, so that way you have double the protection. You're going to want to wear sunglasses or some sort of eye protection, closed-toed shoes and socks, and boots. And just because some of your drought-tolerant plants do not look dangerous, they can be dangerous. Again, with the example of fire sticks doesn't look dangerous, yet it can be hazardous. And so in our picture here of this gardener, she's wearing gloves that go all the way to her wrists to make sure she protects herself from this agave that could poke her. Another tip that we've realized in these drought-tolerant landscapes is to make sure you read up on the little card that comes with the plant if you buy it in the nursery, to check to see how large that plant is going to get. So fire sticks in frost-free areas of San Diego County can grow to be over 40 feet tall and 10 feet wide. So again, it's 40 feet tall and 10 feet wide. Now it shouldn't be planted this close to a sidewalk, because if it's going to grow 10 feet wide, it's going to be really difficult to walk down that sidewalk. So while we're all trying to practice social distancing right now, we need to socially distance ourselves from fire sticks, and we just can't do that on the sidewalk here on the image on the left. It's going to be very difficult. So this is a example of the wrong plant in the wrong place. On the picture on the right here, we have some agaves, and in the background, we have some opuntias. And if you squint really hard and look in the background, there's some palm trees. And all of those plants have sharp thorns or spines that can poke you, and they're just, again, planted too close to this sidewalk here. So check those labels to see how large these plants are going to get at maturity, and give them a little bit of extra space to make sure that you're planting them far enough away from public areas. So when that plant does mature, you don't accidentally hurt yourself. And in the case of agaves, most agaves can produce small asexual clones or offsets, sometimes called pups, that will grow around the base of the main parent plant. And sometimes those pups can grow a couple feet away from the main parent plant. So as that plant matures, even if you've planted the parent plant far enough away from the sidewalk, you also need to give those pups room to expand, because they're also going to grow maybe 2 to 4 feet wide, depending on the species. And like in this picture here, they might eventually end up right next to the sidewalk, where somebody who's walking by might accidentally stab themselves in the shins, or kids could fall into the agave, or a pet could poke themselves. So most of us have good intentions, and we're trying to grow drought-tolerant landscapes. We just need to follow some of these general rules, safety tips of how to keep ourselves safe. So with all of that being said, we've created a website that details nearly 100 plant species that have some sort of safety concern. And we're not going to go over all of them today. That would take way too long, but we're going to go over a couple of them and try and show you how this website works, and how some of these plants can be harmful, and ways for you to mitigate the risk of those harms.